Hello again, my name's Gabe Zollner. Just received a rather interesting article posted July the 29th by Martin Armstrong. Congress authorized propaganda against Americans. The mainstream media became far more systematically involved as the government's tool to spread propaganda after two vital changes were made to the National Defense Authorization Act. You know who supposedly authored that? Senator John McCain from Arizona and Senator Carl Levin from Michigan. A gift that keeps giving. Which included an amendment that legalizes the use of propaganda on the American public. Our pretend representatives in Congress have proven that they do not represent the people and instead exploit us for personal gain, both political as well as monetarily. There have always been an anti-propaganda law that prevented the U.S. government from broadcasting propaganda to American audiences, to the politically influenced people for political gain. During the 1970s and 1980s, the prevailing view was that American taxpayers shouldn't be funding propaganda for American audiences. On July 2nd, 2013, that law was silently repealed with the implementation of a new Reform Act. The bottom line? Congress knew what it was doing when it deliberately unleashed thousands of hours per week of government-funded radio and TV programs for U.S. domestic propaganda efforts. Our pretend representatives see no problem with propaganda today. Congress also allowed the repeal of the fairness doctrine in broadcasting. They no longer require the mainstream media to tell the truth. Why do our politicians now believe they're entitled to lie, cheat, and use mainstream media to create state propaganda? Well, that isn't all that the media does, and you've heard me say it countless times. The police officers that died in Dallas and the police officers that died in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, wouldn't have died if the media would have reported the truth about Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. But they didn't. What they reported was the police shot an unarmed black man in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And what they reported was that the police shot a man who was unarmed simply reaching for his concealed carry permit in Minnesota. Neither one was true and accurate reporting. They fueled the fire, which resulted in the deaths of 5 officers in Dallas, I think 5 wounded in Dallas, and 3 officers slaughtered in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The Smith-Mund Act prevented the government from engaging in propaganda domestically. Nevertheless, that restriction was only applied domestically. The U.S. government always had official propaganda programming produced by the Broadcasting Board of Governors that was only for foreign consumption, such as Voice of America Radio, Free Europe Radio, Liberty, and the Middle East Broadcasting Networks. The tone and nature always varied, and it was produced from more than 100 countries in 61 different languages. Nevertheless, the scope was always with a political intent. This is clearly against the principles of the First Amendment that the free press was to keep a check against government. Thomas Jefferson maintained, quote, "A press that is free to investigate and criticize the government is absolutely essential in a nation that practices self-government and is therefore dependent on an educated and enlightened citizenry. On the other hand, newspapers too often take advantage of their freedom and publish lies and scrupulous gossip that can only deceive and mislead the people. Jefferson himself suffered greatly under the latter kind of press during his presidency, but he was a great believer in the ultimate triumph of truth in a free marketplace of ideas, and looked to that for his final vindication. If anyone needs a reminder of the dangers of domestic propaganda efforts, the past 12 months have proven ample reasons. Additionally, just back in 2012, two USA Today journalists were targeted for reporting about millions of dollars in back taxes owed by Pentagon top propaganda contractors in Afghanistan. The co-owners of the firm had to confess to creating phony websites and Twitter accounts designed to smear the journalists anonymously. Unfortunately, the government today is very focused on manipulating news and commentary on the internet, including social media. They are pretending to be people posting comments and honest views. Here, in this view, former Clinton Gore political consultant Naomi Wolf explains why we should be skeptical of overly theatrical news stories. She points out that propaganda has become legal thanks to the very people claiming to be our representatives. You know, I just read you the entire article. There's a video embedded that you want to take a look at too. Naomi Wolf exposes fake news, false flags. If you don't think the country's been taken over under the leadership of that flop-eared, crack-smoking, Sunni Islamic extremist, homosexual bastard Muslim Arab, you're delusional. They are not gonna change. And I fear for Donald Trump and his family. These are ruthless, cold, calculating, disgusting animals. And Congress is full of them. And so is our government, led by Barack Hussein Obama. You think not? You're not thinking.